Hey, hello everybody. I'm Marty Walser, Raging Owlbear, and welcome back to my long neglected ongoing series, Running Storm King's Thunder. And tonight we're going to talk about some of the giant strongholds. And if I had a clever editor right here, you'd see Inigo Montoya going, "Let me explain. No, there's too much. Let me sum up." Because it has been quite some time since I did one of my videos. And a lot has happened in my campaign, and I'm not going to talk about everything, but let me catch people up on where my players are at, just so you can have an idea of where my advice is coming from. Both my mistakes and my victories running the campaign for the last few years, and on and off. My group only gets together on average maybe twice a month, so it's been really slow going, and that has been a challenge in terms of running the game. So if you can, especially with this campaign, there's so many sort of moving gears and stuff like that. Pardon me, I'm getting a bit of reflection. There's so many gears and moving parts and stuff like that keeping this campaign running close to weekly definitely serves your players better. But not everybody can do that, and especially these days. So, but we're still able to get online a couple times a month. So let me jump right into it. So, last time I filmed a video, my players had gone through Grud Haug, and then they went up to, shoot, the name is now escaping me. The Yartir. They went up to Yartir. And I ran Kracken's Gamble, and I teased a couple things about the plot. I added a bit of a wrinkle in that. So the Kraken is taking over the Thieves Guild in Yartir. His cultists, his accomplices. Basically, the hand in Yartir, which is the Thieves Guild, is being infiltrated by Kraken cultists, and the city, basically the Kraken is trying to exert political influence in that city. And in my game, I'm not playing the Forgotten Realms as written. I actually have sort of a homebrew, but what I did is I took towns and cities and populated them into my already existing homebrew, because that was the only way I could get Storm King's Thunder to make any sense. I was already running a game in this homebrew world, so I had to just be like, okay, that city is going to go here, and this town's going to go here, and I basically pulled in pieces from Forgotten Realms into my own game world. But the point is that, so similar to Forgotten Realms, Yartir is on a major waterway. There's a large inland sea. Let's say a Great Lake. It's basically a very large lake, but something. When I say large lake, something like a Lake Erie or a Huron, or possibly even Michigan or Superior, but maybe not that big. But the point is Yartir is a major trading hub because of this waterway, and so this city actually has a fair amount of influence in the surrounding areas, and so that ties into the Kraken, because Kraken cultists are, water-based, and I took the Aboleth that appears in Kracken's Gamble is sort of working with the Kraken. Like in my game, the Kraken isn't just a Kraken; it's really just like an Aboleth that has sort of ascended to the next level. There's like little baby Aboleths, and there's these medium-sized Aboleths, and then there's these things that become these giant squid monsters, which are basically the Krakens. But they're all sort of Aboleths, and so the Aboleth in Yartir is working with the Kraken in sort of a hierarchical sense. And so the players went in there, ran Kraken's Gamble, the Aboleth got away. So I set them up as a potential callback later. There's so much happening in the game, though. I throw a lot of threads out there that attach to different pieces that are in the campaign book, and sometimes you just can't get to them all. The players follow different lines and different plot threads, and they kind of get interested in one group or another group, and so you have stuff fall by the wayside all the time. It's just the nature of the game. you try to set up some things, and occasionally they don't necessarily fly. But anyways, I wanted to tie the Aboleths into the Kraken, so there was sort of a line through to the main plot for Kraken's Gamble, and and I think it works pretty well that way. But the people, of course, because Storm King's Thunder takes everybody everywhere, they've moved away from Yartir and they're on to something else now. And eventually they got to the Eye of the Allfather. I had earlier, if you'd watched any of my previous videos earlier in the campaign, I had introduced Harshnag specifically to set Harshnag up for a later. So the group met Harshnag, they parted ways, and then because of other events, they came back together. And that was, I also used Zephyros in that manner too, because I did not like the way Zephyros was written into the book. I thought he was useless. He just kind of shows up as this Deus ex machina, to get the characters from one place to another, and I just did not like that at all. So I in the very beginning of the book, I set up reasons for them to travel around. I tried to think of plot hooks and things for them to do so that they would naturally sort of move through the countryside of my campaign. And I moved some of the cities closer in to one another, so it wasn't such a huge gap. But I still had to have like a 10 towns amalgam on a polar coastline way far away. And I pulled Yartir and Tribor closer in together, made them on one of the main trading routes. So I kind of bits and pieces here and there. But be that as it may. So they went to Yartir. I hooked them up with a couple NPCs. I teased the plot thread about Kraken's Gamble. They fought the Aboleth, but the Aboleth got away. I had anticipated that they were going to, curb stomp him pretty hard. That's the one thing, interesting thing about Kraken's Gamble is it can really go either way. And I talked about that in the previous video. But I made sure that he had an out. These Aboleths are supposed to be thousands of years old, or whatever. They've been living on the elemental plane of water. Their incursion into the prime material plane has been happening, but they're a long-lived species. Immortal in the monster manual. For me, immortal, long-lived. I kind of hand-waved the fine details, but I basically said these are very long-lived. They make very long-term plans, but that means they also have a lot of contingencies. They know if they get into trouble, they need escape plan. Just like any good villain, you need a way out. And I didn't want. It's funny because you don't want to rob the players of a victory, but at the same time, you don't want to. Villains can't be just stupid. And that was one of the things that I thought Kraken's Gamble definitely lacked, is that there wasn't really a good way for the Aboleth to escape if things start to go south. He's setting up a lair. You definitely have a backdoor. So I created a backdoor. He had a sewer exit in the pool, aside from the regular drains that are described in the module. There was another passage. There was a passageway out that he could swim down and stuff like that. So of course, the characters they started curb stomping him right away. The water level started going way down. And I said, he goes down I said, as the water comes down, you find that there's this massive sewer pipe, and clearly he has gone down this sewer pipe into the dark, muddy waters. And I said, are you guys going to pursue? And of course they were like, no way, no way. Because they knew that I had been thinking about that. I had created an escape plan, and they're going to go into a sewer tunnel in this creature's lair, but the point was that they were like, maybe that's not such a good idea. And it was funny because I actually didn't, beyond him leaving the scene of Kraken's Gamble, beyond the Aboleth actually exiting, I didn't really have an idea of what those sewer tunnels were like. I kind of thought about it nebulously, but I didn't have an encounter set up. I didn't have a map. I just like, he goes down the sewer tunnel hole. Are you guys going to follow? And if they did, I was just going to have to really improv. And we were coming to the end of the session anyway, so it might have been like, and I realized the end of that fight was going to be the end of the session. So even if they had pursued him, I'd be like, oh, this is a good time to break. We'll see you next week. And then I could have prepped for the following week. A little bit of a don't look behind the curtain. So okay, be that as it may, I'm getting off track. They did their thing in Yartir, but then they got taken away, and they had to meet up with Harshnag, and I sent them out to the Eye of the Allfather. Or that they knew they had to get. Oh right, I brought Zephyros in to dump some plot on them, and basically it was a little bit more natural introduction to Zephyros because they had leads about cloud giant castles in the area with Lyn Armaal, and I was going to run. I was considering running Cloud Giant's Bargain, which I ended up not doing, but I had gotten a copy off of eBay just in case. And then Zephyros. So I basically had teased the fact that there were Cloud Giant castles in the vicinity of the Evermoors and near Yartir, and then down in the Waterdeep. Except in my game, it wasn't Waterdeep. I have a different city. And so it really made a good transition to, okay, you guys are traveling from Yartur. They knew they were likely going to meet up with Harshnag again because they had been doing sendings back and forth and talking, and I had Harshnag doing his own, well, in my game it's her own personal missions related to the Frost Giants. So I was setting up this stuff related to the Frost Giants in the background in case they wanted to go in that direction. And so I basically created an idea of what she was going to do when she was away from the party. And then they were messaging her and saying, hey, we should meet up again. We found some more info. I brought Zephyros in. I was like, okay, this is a good time to tie Zephyros and Harshnag together, make them maybe not buddies, friends, but they know of one another. They're both, because Harshnag is a separate from the Frost Giants in a way. Zephyros sort of stands apart from the Cloud Giants. They're both sort of outcasts. So I figured they would know of one another, and then I could bring Zephyros in a little bit more natural way, have him drop a whole bunch of information about the ordning, what's going on, and Harshnag, is like, oh, meet me in the Eye of the Allfather, or in the vicinity, and we'll go up. And so then that was a way for Zephyros to be like, okay, yeah, I will, Harshnag, I can do this favor. I owe Harshnag. I can do this favor and kind of bring you guys closer to 10 towns, and then you can go from there. And so that made that journey a little bit more, in line with the natural flow of the plot. So that they meet up with Harshnag. They go to the Eye of the Allfather. I did set up some stuff with the Frost Giants, because in a prior adventure, my characters found a couple other artifacts of winter. So for me, the Ring of Winter is not the be all end all. There's actually an artifact set, almost like the Rod of Seven Parts. There's a ring, there's a scepter, there's a crown, and there's like a breastplate armor, whatever. But basically, it's a whole outfit. And if you have the whole outfit, then then all the parts, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as it were. If you have the entire outfit, the matching set, just like in any video game or thing like that, you get the set, then you get a bonus in something. Well, that's the whole idea, is that once you have the Ring of Winter and the scepter and the crown and the breastplate and Duaflachi and the whatever, once you have all the bits, then you have this really superpower in terms of weather control craziness and all kinds of artifact level things. And my party has a scepter and a crown, and they know that these are part of the artifact set. So I was ready to bring in the Frost Giants on them to be like, if they're going to try to, Frost Giants maybe will find out that they have some of these artifacts set that they want, and then I can swoop in, if the campaign sort of goes in that direction. And as it turns out, they started, honing in on the Fire Giants, which is fine. I have the Frost Giants can be like in the background. They don't, I don't necessarily have to bring them forward. And I want to move the plot forward to its conclusion. So I'm kind of letting the Frost Giant thing lie, unless they are clearly like want to go back to be like, hey, there's that thing with the Frost Giants. Maybe we should check into that. And if they go in that direction, then I can be like, yeah, great. You can do that. But we've been playing this campaign for so long that at this point, I'm okay to let some of the subplots fall away and focus them in on the end goal so we can get to the big fight, um, with some dragons and stuff like that. You know, the game is Dungeons and Dragons, and my campaign has had a serious lack of dragons, which I think is a problem. So, yeah. Anyway, Harshnag goes to the eye. They, you know, fight the frostworms in there, the remoras, and you know, I added some difficulty because Harshnag was along. I made sure that it was, you know, like an adult and maybe 2 juveniles, you know, kind of amped it up a little bit, so that party could sort of take on the juveniles, and Harshnag would be against the big one, because the big one could basically swallow the party whole, you know. So it was a dangerous scene, and actually we had one character almost die on that. We had the cleric actually did use Revivify. That party member was going to be gone, but they've been keeping Revivify handy just in case. So we did that, and then of course I had the dragon swoop in, a big fight with Harshnag. The party members definitely did not want to leave, and I made it clear that if they did not, it was likely to be their deaths. So I made sure Harshnag said, "I'll hold the dragon off for now and allow you guys to escape, and I'll fall back as soon as I can." You know, and then of course the whole temple collapses, and you know. So I made it clear that Harshnag died, and the dragon did not. So they investigated specifically that they knew that Harshnag wasn't replying to sendings, so was, you know, there was no answer, so to speak, on the phone. And then when they were doing some investigating of the now collapsed temple, I made sure to show that a dragon, that this giant had transformed back into a dragon, was wounded but was now flying off. You know, so they met the blue dragon, and you know, again, trying to do a lot of setups for the future stuff. You know, even in stuff that I'm not sure they're going to do, I try to create setups for a lot of the different stuff that's in the books. Because I just don't know what direction they're going to go. They actually, at one point, started to go in the direction of stone giants, and I really kind of steered them back, actually, towards the fire and frost, which they had been fighting, just because there was too much. It was already too much. So I didn't tell them outright, ignore the stone giants, but I tried to push them back towards the existing quest hooks that they already had, related to fire and frost, and whatnot. And they kind of took the hint. You know, they were like, "Oh well, yeah, we have all these loose threads. Let's not start a new thing over here. Let's keep following these things that we've already involved in." Grud Haug we already talked about in a previous video, but I do want to emphasize, if you're going to run Grud Haug, the mistake I made is, you know, they were doing a lot of these little hit and runs. They'd run in, run out, run in, run out. But you need to emphasize or let the party know that Goo has prisoners, that they're going to be people that are going to get eaten, and that they need to move more quickly. And that was one of the things that I did not emphasize. And it's not that Grud Haug went that badly, but it dragged on too long. It went over too many sessions, and I needed to create a sense of urgency to make it a little bit more exciting, and I kind of failed on that. I mean, in the long run, it was okay. They liked Grud Haug. It wasn't like it was bad, but it could have been much more exciting. It could have been better. I could have put the pressure on them and created a little bit more electricity, knowing that they have to rescue some prisoners from Goo, and they didn't find the prisoners till much later, and that was, you know, just my bad. That was a setup that I missed right off the bat. Later, they actually stumbled upon Lyn Armaal. I wasn't even gonna go towards the Cloud Giants, because again, I was trying not to mix too many new elements in, keep them focused on one or the other of the giants, and they were again working in the fire giant plot and the frost giant plot a little bit. And I didn't want to, you know, add more confusion, but they kind of stumbled across Lyn Armaal because I had set up Felgelos. they have met a dragon that they call Xavier, um, which is just Felgelos in a different name in my own game, and again they're good about using these NPC connections. They use sending a lot. They talk to these other NPCs. They say, what's going on in your neck of the woods? What's going on over here? So they're trying to pull, pardon me, clues together and piece together and use their NPCs. And I let them do that, and I try not to let them lean too heavily on the NPCs, but I let them do that. And so they were messaging Felgelos, the in my campaign, and I basically decided that at that point Felgelos was already captured. And so he answered them, said, I'm captured. She's listening, basically because she's a sorceress or whatever that studies lore and stuff like that scrying and lore based spells and other things that kind of added to her repertoire. So she, has all these guards and alarms on his manacles on the artifacts that sort of keep him tied down. And so she knew that somebody was trying to contact him. And so she, whatever, dropped a little, oh, can't scry here anymore, shield or whatever. So basically cut off the sending. But I gave them a clue. I said, I'm in a castle over, this area, whatever. I'm captive. I'm in a castle. Please help. I'm getting reamed here. And so they immediately were like, okay, how do we find this castle? How do we go save our buddy? And so that was the setup for Lyn Armaal. And then so they jumped in. I took the idea from Cloud Giant's Bargain, where they kind of do a high skydive featherfall into the castle. And that actually worked that ran really nicely. I had a wizard who really went through their spells and said, how can we prep, and are there any scrolls I can purchase? And they got fog cloud and featherfall and of course flies and stuff like that. They basically really prepped up so that they would have ways in and out, because obviously that's one of the difficulties of Lyn Armaal. I'm going to get to that in a moment. So they get in, they sneak around the whole place, they find Felgelos, they get Felgelos out of his shackles, and Felgelos immediately tears off to seek some revenge. And so now all hell is breaking loose in the castle. The players actually are just like, you know what, we set the dragon free. It's no longer our fight. We're gonna get out, and they wanted to get one of the conchs. Had an idea that one of the conchs might be in this castle, and they were hoping to get it. But once sort of the dragon got out, and I had Felgelos be really pissed. He's just you know what? They've been torturing me for weeks. I'm gonna exact some revenge. And so that's when all kinds of craziness started happening. So the party just booked it out of the griffin's nest and jumped, and just you know what, we're gonna featherfall out to just get away from the castle as quickly as possible, while Felgelos circles around and uses his breath weapon and causes mayhem with the giants and stuff like that. So they did that, and then I had been pondering whether I should do something kind of nasty, because I wanted to let them know Felgelos had been kind of a little bit of a comedic thing, just like in the book, a little bit he gets into trouble and there's the flying misfortune and stuff like that. But because he'd been tortured, I wanted to really pull out a dark side. And so I decided to do something a little bit, I wasn't sure my players were going to be totally on board, but I didn't want to. You have to be careful about, and I've talked about this in other videos, what events can trigger the people at your table. So if you don't know them really well, it's good to have some sort of safety tools in the game to say, this topic is, we're not doing that, we're not going there, and I play a pretty safe game. I don't delve into the really, edge dark type stuff. This is not my style. I'm pretty bog standard D&D. But what I had Felgelos do is one of the children, he took one, and basically in my mind, the children were young enough that all their powers weren't fully developed. So he took one of the Cloud Giant children and dropped the child off the side of the castle. And I had Sansuri, the Cloud Giantess, was able to save one of her children by casting spells, but the other one plummeted to the ground. So I wanted this to be a shocking moment, but I didn't want my actual players to feel. I wanted the shock to be in game, not necessarily at the table. And so, I had been stewing over what to do about this and how serious I would go with this. But I know my players fairly well. I think, I can read them. But what this really brought out a very interesting moment, because what ended up happening is, so the Cloud Giant youngin dies from the fall, and my cleric runs over there as quickly as possible and casts Revivify. And I was like, oh my god, what an awesome turn of events, that this party goes over. Clearly, they've released Felgelos. The Giants kind of suspect that, but they release Felgelos. Felgelos does the deed. He heals the child. The adult Cloud Giants come down and basically say, because of that one act, we're not gonna brutally kill you, basically. And then not only that, but we did this sort of a little bit of role play negotiation, and Sansuri said, "You can borrow the conch. She basically says, you have 6 months. In 6 months, I'm gonna come for you, and you gotta give me back my conch. But until then, you can borrow it." Because, she's got her own agenda. She's not really, at this point, she doesn't necessarily believe that the Storm Giants are an important part anymore. The ordning's broken. She's doing her own thing. She's got her own agenda. If the party has the conch, she doesn't care. She's like, whatever. Take the conch. I'm going to want it back. It's my conch, but you can use it. So here it is. And I just thought that'd be a good way to get them a conch. Now, I made it so that you need 2 conchs. One conch transports 3 people, a Cloud Giant Lord, and 2 lieutenants or retainers, whatever. That way, Hikatan won't get basically an invasion of all his, rivals coming into the castle at once. There's one 3 people can come in using the conch, and like I said, it's an in trip only. So I figured that would be a good safeguard for the conchs, in terms of Hikatan's mind, and the Storm Giant's mind, because that way they limit the accessibility of the Maelstrom from the other Giant Lords. They want the Giant Lords to come as emissaries, but at the same time, they don't want them bringing a whole group of people. So that means they need 2 conchs. Goo's conch was destroyed. They got Sansuri's conch, and now they headed into Iron Slag to try to find their second conch. So that kind of catches you up somewhat, as if you cared, but just so you know, that's how I rolled out things. They hit Iron Slag. They did the Akvolt village. They escaped from the Akvolt and actually pretty much devastated the Akvolt people, and then made their infiltration at Iron Slag. So now that I've sort of set up all that stuff, let me talk about the individual giant strongholds and issues I had with them, and just things to be aware of. Grud Haug actually, for me, seemed the least bit interesting, but I think actually ended up being more interesting than I thought, and in some ways more interesting than some of the other strongholds. And the reason is simply because Grud Haug is very much more open than the other giant strongholds. There are ways in through the caves. There's There's more than one way in through the cave. There's the water on the backside of the thing. There's just it allows a party to infiltrate without necessarily bringing the entire group of giants down on their heads all at once. And it allows an escape. If things start to go south, you have plenty of leeway to give your players an out. You know, whether they dive into the lake and start swimming off, or water breathing, or escape through the pig pens, or do the point is that there's lots of ways that if things are going wrong, an invisibility or something will allow people to get in and out. Lyn Armaal obviously has its own challenges in that the way in is flying, the way out is falling. And so you are somewhat more limited in how your party is able to access Lyn Armaal. And the other challenge with Lyn Armaal that isn't really present in Grud Haug and is less present in Iron Slag, but still there somewhat, is doors. 12-foot door, doors with a handle that's 12 foot off the thing, and you need a certain amount of strength, which you can't mage hand it. There's a lot of challenge trying to move through the castle in and out of closed rooms. I honestly wasn't sure how to manage that. It was kind of a huge pain in the ass. And so when they came in, I played a couple of the doors. They had to get up. People had to get up on people's shoulders and do the thing where they're standing there, and one guy's like yanking on the doorknob, and it I don't know what it is. It wasn't fun. It didn't feel, for whatever reason, and I don't know. Maybe it's on me, that I couldn't figure out how to make that sort of thing more tense, and they're going to get discovered at any moment, stuff like that. But I got tired of it. They had to go through a couple doors, and I was just like, I kind of started to just let doors be unlatched, or I didn't want to have to play out a skill check or whatever for every single room they had to go through. It was challenging enough to figure out how to get them through that stronghold without literally every giant coming down on their head and destroying them. I mean, that one is a dangerous stronghold, because once the alarm is raised, there's the giants can really close in on one spot very quickly from wherever they are. It's somewhat small in scope. I mean, it's big because it's huge because of the giants, but in terms of where people have to move, where the giants have to move, this giant's here and they go this way, and this giant's over here and they go this way, and the party can easily become cut off or surrounded. So it was a challenge and especially I like the place to feel alive. So I'm not really keen. Well, I had to do this a little bit, and the book is pretty good about, like, if this giant hears something over here, they will go support that. This, if fighting breaks out, so and so goes here, so and so goes here. It's pretty good about that, but at the same time, it's somewhat unrealistic. It's still a little bit static, because I feel like if a really hardcore fighting broke out in one part of the castle, everybody would start to hone in on that stuff. I mean, yeah, there are certain people that, this person's going to guard the children and this person's going to do this. But in general, the rest are going to really, if one of the giants says they're in the courtyard, then everybody's going to start coming in on the courtyard. And I wanted the place to feel more alive. So, giants would move. I had like a couple guards, but then I had to figure out, okay, if this guy starts here, does he go to breakfast? Does he go on lunch? Does somebody go to the bathroom? I wanted to make it feel like there are people moving around the castle, because life is occurring in the castle while they're there, and again, they try to infiltrate like early in the morning or whatever, at a time when the activity would be lowest, but at the same time, there's still guards, there's still stuff like that. So I tried to do a little bit of that, but and all of the strongholds, that's been kind of a personal challenge of mine. Most people can just play it as it's written, that these guys are in this room, these guys are in this room, and as long as there's not a huge amount of noise, they pretty much stay where they are. That's fine. Yeah, actually, just do that. It's really my personal weirdness that I have to make it feel more dynamic. But that was a challenge, not just with Lyn Armaal, but with all the strongholds, is to feel like, okay, well, what do these people do from day to day? Where do they move? You know, who goes to the kitchen and brings Goo her food? Who does this? Who does that? Um, so getting back to Lyn Armaal, you just think about the doors. What are you going to do about the doors? Think about where people would be at any given time of day. I mean, you almost have to be like, where are they in the morning? Where are they during the day? Where are they at night? You almost have to think about how the environment changes based upon the time of day, or not, or just hand wave that. Be like, you know what? Where they are is where they are. Doesn't matter if the party comes in the middle of the night, everybody's awake for some reason, or if the party comes in the day, everybody's awake. Just play it the way it's written. I'm just weird that way. So, just keep in mind, access is an issue with Lyn Armaal. The Cloud Giants closing in on the players is a problem with Lyn Armaal. Or, not a problem, but, a concern for the players that the GM needs to be aware of. Otherwise, Lyn Armaal was okay. I wasn't super keen on running that one, but it just kind of popped in, and I wanted them to free Felgelos. Actually, I wanted that plot tie-in because they had met him earlier and they had made a kind of relationship with that NPC. I thought it'd be fun to bring that back in, and then and then I didn't even come up with the idea of turning it on its head until they were actually infiltrating, and then I was like, when they get Felgelos out, how is he actually going to react? And that's when I sort of came up with the idea, is thinking about what's happening. All right, and last but not least, let's talk about Iron Slag. So, I really thought when I read Iron Slag that this would be the one that I would like to run the most, or the most fun. And this was actually the one that has also given me a bit of a headache, and honestly, all of them have. But Iron Slag is particularly dangerous and particularly tricky because there's really only one way in, and that's the Akfolk Village and the elevator. The problem is the elevator's unreliable because it's always moving, but it moves slowly, moves slow as molasses. So, it takes like 15 minutes to go from the top to the bottom. It stops at every floor, I don't know. But the point is there's a whole bunch of levels of mines. It's supposed to stop at the levels. And as soon as your players know that there are slaves in the mines or something like that, they're going to get distracted. The fact that there are mines in Iron Slag and there's nothing in the book about the mines, like literally nothing, maybe a sentence or two to say, hey, maybe they could come in through the mines. That was a little bit frustrating about Iron Slag because immediately they wanted to check out the mines. They wanted to, they knew the elevator was a kind of a direct line, but they were a little bit concerned about just going right into the heart of Iron Slag, which they should be. That was a smart move on their part to not be like, let's just push lobby, hit the elevator and push lobby, woo, open up the doors. Oh, hey, here's tons of giants everywhere. So they went through the mines. They wanted to go investigate some of the mines on the way down, and that was something that I wasn't necessarily prepared for, but luckily I did a couple Google searches a few weeks in advance just to find some generic mine layouts, and somebody did do kind of an Iron Slag mine. It's, if you go on, well, you can Google search it, do Iron Slag mines, something like that. Somebody built some maps, some VTT maps. They're great. They put them on Reddit, or they basically published them out there. They threw them out there and said, here are my Iron Slag maps. Go ahead and use them. And they're good. They have a whole bunch of stuff, and some of the mines just kind of go off into the dark, and so you can add your own details or whatever. But I just grabbed a few of the maps. You know, they weren't going to do every single level, but I grabbed a few of the maps. I created ways for them to connect by going through the mines rather than doing the elevator, like you know, level 10 connects down to level 9 or whatever. And you know, if you follow this passageway over here, and then that comes up. So I basically created ways that the passageways were joined. At some of the mines, you could actually just travel through mines rather than travel through the elevator, because that would make sense. You know, why would you have to go out to the elevator every time? Not everyone was connected. Some of them you did have to go to the elevator, but there were some that you could take the passage and they slope down, and then all of a sudden you're on the next level. Because I wanted to give the players a little bit of freedom of movement that way, because I knew if things did go wrong, they were going to have to find places to hide, whatever. You know, these are the things that you need to consider when running these giant fortresses, is that what's going to happen if it all goes bad? You know, how can you assist the players? You know, and not that you're going to give them a get out of jail free card every time. You know, if they do something stupid and they get in over their head, you know, sometimes you just got to let the dice roll, and they get captured, or some of them get killed. But you know, you have to consider what are my options aside from a TPK, or have they just committed so hard that it's a TPK is just the natural outcome. Nobody really wants that, obviously. Prisoners, capturing, doing other stuff, figuring a way for them to get out. And I even told my players, I said, if you guys flee from a combat, if you guys say, we are going to run away, I'm not going to try to gank them on every single, like, you move, you know, 30 feet, and then they move 30 feet. I'm not going to grid them to death. I'm going to say, okay, everybody makes a run for it, and then it becomes like a chase scene, you know, like, can you get away, you know, and then we can play like a skill challenge or do something else for them to leave combat, rather than try to play out the minutia, because what inevitably happens is somebody's going to get left behind and hurt, and either they're left to die and the rest of the party has to run away, which nobody wants to do. Everybody wants to go back and rescue their friend, which is then going to result in most people dying. Or you have to say, I let you go scot-free. But the point is that you have to think about this in advance. What's going to happen? Let your party know. Can they run away? You know, can they just say, we're going to declare a runaway? Let them know. Can they surrender? You know, maybe they know they'll be taken prisoner, and that's okay. You know, give them an out. Don't just say, okay, if you surrender, you're going to die automatically. You have to talk with your players and let them know what the parameters of these types of things are. You know, will the giants auto kill? Yeah, that's up to you to decide. You know, they get thrown in Brute Goose prison, they gotta figure out a way out. But you know, giants and ogres are dumb. Okay, figure out an escape plan. They get captured by Sansuri. What is Sansuri going to do with prisoners? Can she utilize them for her benefit? They get captured by the fire giants. Well, they're going to get thrown into slave mines. This is sort of what I thought. And then again, they could try to do a slave revolt. Yeah, there's ways. You know, especially with spellcasters these days, there are a number of spells that if they've, you know, done their research or whatever, they're going to have a few spells that don't require material components, you know, are verbal and somatic, and you can play with that, or you can say, I'll allow cantrips or do whatever, if they get all this stuff taken away from them. And that at least gives them the opportunity to get out. So, I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about. I know it was a big data dump, but honestly, the real piece of advice on these is, especially with Iron Slag, Lyn Armaal is a little bit easier because if they're prepared to fly or featherfall in, then they'll be prepared to fly or featherfall out. But with Iron Slag, you have to think about how are they going to get in and out? What other opportunities can you give them? And they're going to go to the mines. Okay, maybe not every party, but if they find out there are slaves, they find out there are mines, and they think, oh, there's going to be more slaves in the mines, they might get sidetracked on a rescue mission and be like, okay, we're going to try to free as many slaves as possible. Be prepared for that. Be prepared for those side tangential stuff. You know, and I had to try to keep them thinking about what is their goal here in Iron Slag, and I enforced that by when they talked with the dwarves before, and the dwarves are like, hey, you know, if you're going to go to Iron Slag, could you just check some things out? You know, give them a clear mission, scout the base, try to find out how many fire giants there are, and get out and then get out. You know, don't, and then that way, if you give us numbers and stuff like that, then maybe the dwarves can come in and rescue prisoners later or stuff like that. The point is that you keep them focused on what they need to do. Get a conch, do some scouting, but don't necessarily try to fight the entire conclave or enclave rather, because that's going to go bad. So, you know, try to keep them focused. And if they start to say, well, we got to free the slaves, you can be like, you know what, if you let the dwarves know what's going on, they can take it from there. So, you know, you be their eyes and ears. You go back to them and say, okay, here's what we found. Here's a map that we drew of where we went so that you guys have that intel. You know, set it up so that the party isn't necessarily responsible for saving the entire world. You know, they have their one part to play, but they don't have to do everything. I think that's pretty much it for now. That was actually a lot longer than I thought it would be. So I hope that helps you think about some of the giant enclaves. You know, I don't have any specific piece of advice of run this one this way, run this one this way, but just consider ways in, ways out, what's going to happen if things go bad. You know, give the party some sort of, if you can, give them intel on layout and things that happen that, you know, that could happen there. You know, try to give them as much as you can without, like, obviously handing it to them on a silver platter. But, you know, maybe the dwarves have a prisoner who has escaped. They've freed a few prisoners already. They can give some intel on the situation, or at least a rough idea of, okay, here's where the giants are, and here's where the slaves are. You know, I mean, you could even try to draw a crude hand-drawn map, or, you know, give them some information up front so they, when they go in, they're not going completely blind and not totally, you know, unprepared for what they're going to face. Because it's funny, when you have a whole party, those giants will go down quickly because your party's going to dish out a lot of damage. But at the same time, you bring a couple more giants in and they start doing 40, 50 points of damage or whatever per hit, the giants, per attack, you know, yeah, people are going to start dropping like flies. So luckily my party has gotten away with some very good rolls, some bad rolls on the part of the enemy and some good rolls on their part. And we're finally finishing up Iron Slag. They got in there. They've been doing really well. They managed to kill some giants, thin out the numbers, and I'm having the dwarves come in behind them, sort of commando style. So they joined up with the dwarves. They said, we're going in. The dwarves are like, we'll have your back. We'll try to create a diversion. So the dwarves are doing some stuff, and then the party's doing some stuff, and that way I have a reason that some of the giants are distracted and not everybody's going to kind of conglomerate to one spot, so that the party can move through the dungeon without necessarily bringing everybody in on them, because the dwarves, like I said, are creating a diversion. So I said, okay, these giants are going to go over and see what's going on over here, and these giants might come over and see what's going on over there, but that means they don't have the whole place coming down on their ears, as it were. So that's it for this episode of Running Storm King's Thunder. I know it was a bit rambly. I apologize for that. There's just a lot that has happened between the last episode and this episode. and I wanted to give some detail about what my group is going through. So maybe you have an idea, or you come away with some thoughts about what your group will be going through, or how you can, add to plot or take away from plot or whatever. Point is, I hope it helped. I've been Marty Walser. I'm known as Raging Owlbear on social media, on Twitter, and I have a thing on Twitch now. I'm running Minecraft Dungeons Mondays and Wednesday nights. So, drop on in, say hello while I play video games. And I'm going to start talking D&D over there too. So I hope you can join me. Please like and subscribe. Give me a little bit of a boost. I'm trying to get some little bit of audience back after my long neglected YouTube channel. So, and I hope you've liked the videos so far, and please leave me a comment, see if they've been helpful, and just tell me about what your party's doing. How did you handle Iron Slag? How did the Eye of the Allfather go for you? Just, throw a comment out there. I'd love to hear them. I want to hear what other people are going through. So thanks for watching, and have a good day.